All right, now before we get into this next step, I want to point out that this is something that you can skip and come back to later if you like. This is not something that you need to do right away. I just think it would be a fun way to sort of pump up sort of the enthusiasm for working on this project and making it look like we're doing something really cool here. We're also going to be using something called Mash, which is a really fun thing to sort of play around with. And we're going to be using a lot of little tips and tricks here that may not seem standard or may not seem standard procedure. But we're going to be using quite a few little tricks. So again, if this is something that you just kind of want to watch and come back and deal with later, that's absolutely fine to do. But I think it is a fun way to kind of get the motivation going or get the momentum going for this project. So we're going to start by making a few shingles, a few different variations of shingles for our roof. And I'm going to start here just by hiding my house. So I'm going to select everything that I have here using my marquee select. And then I'm going to hit Control H, which is going to hide my house. I'm going to create a regular cube. I hit F to sort of frame that cube up. And then I'm going to scale it out. I think I'm going to scale it out to about the size of my grid here. The size that we're making this isn't super important. I do want it to be somewhat square and maybe about the size of my grid. So give it a little bit of thickness. So maybe something along the lines of that. And then I'm going to bevel it. So I'm just going to select my entire object and I'm going to bevel it. Now, beveling is something that you'll see me doing quite a bit moving forward for more of the finished pieces. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's nice to get a little bit of an edge highlight on a lot of your geometry. And you don't really get that with just a 90-degree angle. So you'll sort of see what I'm talking about when we move forward. So I'm going to select my geometry here and just do a bevel. And I'm going to drop the fraction down just a little bit, maybe something like 0.3, 0.2. And when I render this, this is just going to give me a nice little edge highlight right there. And that's all I really need. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate it 3 times. So I'm going to just select it and do Control D, which is duplicate. And I'm just going to pull off 3 duplicates. So I'm basically making 4 different variations of my roof shingles. And then I'm going to use my multi-cut tool and just one at a time, just sort of make these look a little bit more interesting. So grab my multi-cut tool, add some divisions here like that, and maybe like that. And this one I'm going to make pretty simple, maybe just sort of bevel this corner in. I just want them all to look slightly different and then just maybe lift this edge up a little bit like that. So that's my first shingle, and then I'll just work on the other 3. Again, this one maybe we'll add some cracks. So I'm going to add 3 little edges really close together, and then I'm going to take the center one, try to select it like that, and just move that down so I have a little bit of a crack there. And then I'll add a couple more divisions, kind of make it a little bit more interesting this way and that way. Now we're not going to see these shingles like halfway up. They'll be covered by another shingle. So I'm not worried too much about the details of them up here. But, we can kind of do something like so. I just want to make these all slightly different. So I have sort of a crack in that one. This one, I think what I'm going to do is make it a little bit more round. So I'm going to take these two corners, kind of move them up a little bit. Just kind of round this one off a little bit. I want them to stay about the same width so they can line up a little bit nicer when it comes time to lining them up. But I do want them all to tilt up just slightly like that. And then finally, we can do one with maybe another different kind of crack. So maybe this one would just have a crack that way. And something like that. All right, so now I have 3 different types of shingles here that I can use for my roof. Now we're going to be turning these into a mesh network. So very important to do before you turn anything into a mesh network is to sort of clean them up, and you want to make sure that they're in the center of the grid. You want to make sure that they have no history, and you want to make sure that their transforms are all zeroed out. And I'll cover these things one at a time. But first, what I want to do is just rename them. So I'm just going to go through and rename shingle 01, shingle 02, shingle 03, shingle 04. Okay. Now I want to make sure that they're in the center of my grid. Now I know this first one here is in the center of the grid and its pivot point is centered. So that one's good. Now all of their pivot points should be fairly centered. So I don't have to really worry about where their pivot point is. And that's just, you know, where the widget is, where it's going to rotate. But I do want to get them all back into the center of the grid. And we can really easily do that just by coming over here to our translate Z in our channel box and just zeroing that back out. And that's just going to pop right back into the center of our grid. So I'm going to do that for all 4 of them. I'm going to select them all, and I want to get rid of their history here. So I'm going to select all of them and delete my history, which is this button right here, or it's going to be under edit, delete all by type, history. And I want to zero out all of their transforms. So to do that, I have my button here, which is freeze transforms, or you can go to modify freeze transforms. And that will make sure that their translates are all zeroed out and their scales are all at 1. So very important. We want to make sure that there's no history, make sure that all of the transforms are 0, and we want to make sure that they're on the center of the grid. So we can see that my grid is right here. They're all pretty much centered on the grid. Crucial. Those are crucial steps we want to do before we make our mesh network. Now, I deal with a lot of students or a lot of people watching my videos who they immediately have issues with mesh, and it's 9 times out of 10 it's because they forgot one of those steps. So center of the grid, no history, transforms are all zeroed out, and you should be good. Okay. So, and now we can create our mesh network. So I'm just going to select my shingle 1 here. I'm actually going to hide all of these for now. So I'm going to hide shingle 02 through shingle 03 just by selecting them and doing Control or Command H, and that will hide them because we don't need to see them at the moment. We just need shingle 1. So I'm going to select my shingle one, and I'm going to come up to my Create Mash Network here. This is also under your FX tab. Under Mash, under your Mash tab. So this is always also under your Mash tab. So I'm going to do Create Mash Network. And now you'll see a couple things happen here in your outliner and in your scene. The first thing that you'll notice is that you have a bunch of duplicates, and when you select them, they all seem to be one object. This is perfectly normal. This is the way that it should happen. Now in your outliner, you'll notice that your shingle one that you had selected is now hidden. Again, perfectly normal. And you'll see that you have two new nodes. You have this Mash node and you have this Mash repro node. Now this Mash repro node is your new object. This is your replicated object. And then your Mash node, this is kind of where all the magic's going to happen. This is what's going to be really fun to play around with. So I'm going to select my Mash node. I'm going to come over to my attribute editor. And the first thing I want to look at here is my distribute node. So basically what I want here is I want this to be set to a grid distribution. And then I want to start sort of spacing this out. Now, I'm not concerned about my distance Y, only my distance X and Z. And I need to bump these above the value of 30 and 30. So we're going to just go something crazy like 500 and 500. And that's going to space things way out, which is fine. And then I want to set the number of shingles that I'm going to have across my roof. Now we can kind of count here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I can go ahead and say I want 14 shingles in my grid Z. So something around there. We'll do an even fifth. Let's do 16. We'll do an even 16 there. And I can also count this way. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So about the same. So 16 and 16. Now I'm not going to do 16 here. Instead, I'm going to do 8. I'm going to half that value. And then I'm going to work on my spacing here. So I want these to be a little bit closer together. So I want them spaced maybe a little bit further apart this way. But then in my distance Z, I want them basically right up next to each other like that. Okay. So that's looking good the way they are. The next thing I want to do is create an offset node because I want them all to be just rotated up a little bit. Actually, before we do the offset node, let's get our other shingles in there so we can see them all randomized and it'll look a little bit nicer, neater that way. So I'm going to come over to my attribute editor. I'm going to click on my Mash 1 node. And I want to add an ID node. So I'm going to click ID node. And what this will help me do is distinguish between the 3 different types of shingles. So I want my ID type to be random. And I want my ID count to be 4 because I have 4 different types of shingles. And now I'm going to come over to my Mash 1 repro node. And I'm just going to drag and drop my other shingles into this objects list. So I'm just going to middle mouse, click shingle 2, shingle 3, and shingle 4. And now we see that all of those shingles are being randomized there. So now we get a little bit more of a interesting thing going on. I'm going to turn off my wireframe on shaded just so we can kind of get a better idea. of what those look like. Cool. So let's get a little bit more into this. So let's go back to our Mesh 1 node. I'm going to add a offset node. And with this offset node, I just want to rotate my shingles up a tad. So I'm going to go to, I think it's rotate. That's rotate X. I don't want that. We don't want rotate Y. We want rotate Z. So yeah, I'm going to just rotate them up in Z. Something like that, about 9 degrees. And basically the next thing I'm going to do here is make it so we have them offset. So we're going to stagger them a little bit. So I'm going to create another sort of replication of these shingles, and they're just going to be slightly offset. So we have them kind of like in the center, in between these other ones. Okay. So to do that, we're going to go back to our Mesh node one more time. We're going to create another node here. We're going to create a replicator node. And I'm going to go ahead and say I want one replicant. I don't want it offset in, I do want it offset in my Z position, but I also want it offset in my X position. So I'm going to offset it in X, maybe about 15, maybe a little less, just where it's sort of like just sitting in the middle between those two. And then we can offset it in our Z, so it's just in the center. So that's probably going to be about 12 or 15. Split the difference, we'll say 13. That looks pretty good. So yeah, I'm liking the way that looks. Now, if I don't like this, if I don't really like the random configuration that I'm getting here, I can just come over to my random node, or I don't have a random node yet. I'll get to that in a second. I can come to my distribute node, and I can just change the seed there, maybe not there. ID node, that's where it's going to be. So I can change the seed in my ID node, and that will just sort of give me a different random configuration until I find something that I'm fairly happy with there. So I kind of like that. I think I do want there to be slightly more shingles. So I'm just going to go back to my distribute node, and maybe instead of 8, we'll do 12 here, and I'm going to up this to maybe 20. And then we just have to change our distance again. So I think I like that a little bit better. Just more shingles that way. Now this looks great, but I do want to randomize it even more. I want to just make it a little bit more worn. So from here, I'm going to go back to my Mesh node, and we're going to do a random node. So I'm going to create a random, and that will automatically randomize things a little bit. But then if I go into this random node, I can randomize things a lot more. So we can randomize position. So I'm maybe going to randomize my position in X a little bit. I don't think I'm going to mess with the position Y. I can sort of mess with position Z a tad. So X, Z, maybe random rotation, a little bit of random rotation in each one. And then I'm going to do a little bit of random scale in each one as well. And this will just give me a nice randomized look where, you know, everything looks like it's just sort of chaotic and random rather than like nice and neat. Now again, I can change the seed of this to get a different look if I want. Again, I can go to my replicator, or not my replicator, but I can go to my ID node and change the seed there as well. Can mess with those settings. And I think I'm happy with that. I'm pretty happy with the result of that. So the next thing we're going to do is just sort of put this on our roof. And this is going to be another, you know, one of those things where we're doing some tricks here to get this to work right. Now, there's definitely ways where we could just apply this straight to our roof, but I find this is the best method for getting the most control over your shingle roof, if that's what you want to do. So what I'm going to do from here, this may seem like a crazy thing I'm going to do, but I'm going to make it sort of collapse the network. So I'm going to make it where it's not a mesh network anymore, and these shingles are just a single object. So I'm going to select all of my shingles here and just delete the history. So we'll go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History, and then I can actually just delete that mesh node. And now what I have is just a piece of geometry here. So I'm going to just move this to the side for now. And I'm going to unhide our house. So I'm just going to select the three parts of my house. Shift H will unhide it. And then I'm going to use another little tool to sort of fit my shingles to my roof. So I'm going to duplicate this shingle that I have here. So Control D to duplicate this guy. And I'm going to create a lattice deformer on this. Now, what a lattice deformer will let me do is sort of deform the object in a way where I can make it fit the shape of the roof a little bit better. So to do that, I'm going to select my shingles. I'm going to go to Deform, and I'm going to create a lattice. And this will create a little sort of cube around this. And basically what's happening here is if I come in here and say, select lattice point, and I can move this around, see it's going to warp the whole thing. So what I want to do is change my lattice a little bit. So I'm going to select my lattice. I'm going to go to my attribute editor or my channel box. I should see it in my channel box too. And I want to change the amount of divisions here that I have. So I don't need any divisions, T divisions or S, or I do want S divisions. So maybe we'll do 5, 6 S divisions, and that's it. That's all we really need. Now, when I'm moving and adjusting this, I want to make sure that I'm moving the lattice, which is the box, and not the shingles. So I'm going to select the lattice. I'm going to come over here and sort of get it in position. I'm obviously going to need to scale it up. Move that into position. And then we can rotate that. This might actually be something easier to do from a front view. So I just hit spacebar to switch my views. And I do want it to hang down the side of the roof a little bit. And then the really cool thing here is now I can sort of adjust these lattice points to fit the shape of my roof. Now I'm just sort of eyeballing them. I don't need to get them perfect. So, and then we can jump to perspective and kind of check that out, see how it looks. Scale that in a little bit. Till I get that right. And then when I'm done with all these adjustments on this, then I can once again delete my history and it will get rid of the lattice for me. So I'll just select that geometry, go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. That lattice will disappear. And now what I want to do is center the pivot on my shingles here. So I'm going to do Center Pivot. I'm going to duplicate it. So Control D to duplicate. We'll move the duplicate over. And I'm going to do -1x scale over here in my channel box. So -1, and that will just basically give me a mirror image. And then I can just line this guy up just like that. So that is looking great. And now I want to do this side over here. So this roof over here. So basically the same process. I'm just going to duplicate my shingle here. And we'll rotate it sort of in the correct space first. So it's going to be -90 degrees rotation. And then I'm going to add my lattice. So deform lattice. Again, we'll do no T divisions and we'll do a few S divisions. Again, we could probably do this from a side view to really get it where we want it to be. Scale that up quite a bit. And now for these, I don't want to necessarily scale them in like that because I don't want my shingles here to look skinnier than here. So for now, what I'm going to do is just sort of let them hang off of the front of the building like this. So that's going to be just fine. And then I'll probably just have to eyeball it here with my lattice points in the perspective because it doesn't seem like our our side view is really showing those lattice points. So I'm just going to try to eyeball it here. The best I can to get that looking like it's matched up with the shape of the house. And that looks pretty good. So again, I'm just going to select my geometry. I'm going to edit, delete all by type history. I'm going to duplicate, and then this time I'm going to do negative Z scale. So -1 Z scale. That didn't really work out because we have transforms. See, it's rotated 90 degrees. So I think we do want our -1 X scale. And then I can put that in position. We want to make sure that our roof geometry isn't sticking through. So something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just name this shingle shingle sample. I don't really know what to name that, but I just want to name it something, and I'm going to go ahead and hide it so we don't see it. Now, these I'm going to group them together first. So I'm going to grab all of our shingles, and I'm going to Control G or Command G to group them together. And then I'm going to separate them all. So for something we're going to do much later on, I want them all to be separate objects. I don't want them all to be one object the way they are. So I'm going to group them together like I did there, and then we'll select them all, and then we're going to go to Mesh Separate. And that's a function that may take a few seconds to actually go through. But once it has done that, you can see that all of my shingles here are individual. And what I can do from here is we'll jump over to my front view. And I'm going to select all my shingles hanging off the front of that house. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete them. I accidentally deleted my chimney. I don't want to do that. So just want to do something like that. I may delete this other line of them as well, but for now I'm going to leave it like that. So now I have in my outliner, you'll see that I have a group of all my shingles, and then I have a group of each of my individual sides of the shingles as well. And that's fine to leave like that. I'm just going to rename this group to shingles. And then it's okay if these are just named the way they are for now. And we'll just leave it like that for now. And we have our shingles on our roof. It's looking good. And next we can move on to maybe some more modeling, general modeling of the rest of the house.